Hello, everyone, and welcome back to This Day in History, our nightly look back at a specific day in history, where we take a look back at the events of a day, the historic context in which those events took place, and the historic ramifications of those events. As always, if you have not yet, please hit the like button, the subscribe button, the bell notification icon to be alerted anytime I post new content, and tell a friend. And without any further ado, This Day in History, July 6th. And on this day, in 1946, the 43rd President of the United States of America, George W. Bush, was born in New Haven, Connecticut. Bush served as president from 2001 until 2009. Bush is remembered, of course, for being president when the September 11th terrorist attacks occurred, for leading America into a war in Iraq and Afghanistan, leading America through the post 9/11 rebuilding phase, being president when Hurricane Katrina happened, and being president when the 2008 Great Recession hit. Bush is one of the presidents that his approval ratings were all over the place. The average, according to Gallup, for the 2001 to 2009, the 8 years that he was president, is 49%. But this is very skewed. He had a first-term average of 62% and a second-term average of 37%. And I say it's a little skewed because he has a high watermark from September 21st through September 22nd, 2001, when the poll was conducted, of 90%. And he has a low point of 25%, which was achieved on 3 different occasions. The poll conducted October 3rd to 5th, 2008, October 10 to 12, 2008, and Halloween to November 2nd, 2008. Which is 1 point shy of what Richard Nixon's approval rating was when he left office in disgrace. Bush, as I said, in the aftermath of September 11th, had that 90% approval rating. He was seen as a calm, steady force of resolve and determination. Who can ever forget him standing on top of the rubble at Ground Zero and telling those workers working in the rubble, those men that had ran into the tower, that were digging to save and possibly pull out alive some of their colleagues, but mainly a recovery mission at that point. One of them yelled out, he couldn't hear him. And the president said, "I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you." And pretty soon, the people that tore these buildings down will hear from all of us. And that's one of the most moving statements ever. When he talked about in his Oval Office address and every subsequent time that he was speaking about the war, that it was not a war on Islam, that it was a war on people who perverted Islam, that it was a war on people that took a great faith and distorted its meaning. And that was such a reassuring thing for our country, a level of clarity and leadership that our country is sadly lacking at this moment in time. It also, I will say, as much as I admire President Bush, and I'm going to be totally honest here, I am a huge admirer of this man. To be fair, I am going to have to level some pretty heavy criticism President Bush failed the citizens of New Orleans in the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Katrina in an historic way. The citizens that were standing on their rooftops, waving to the helicopters, our federal government and our federal government's response to that disaster was atrocious. President Bush visited the Gulf Coast region many times afterwards and led to huge funding to rebuild New Orleans, but the immediate aftermath was abysmal. The intelligence failures that led to the Iraq War were very troubling. The whole world agreed at the time that Saddam Hussein likely had weapons of mass destruction. But he did not. The argument later became that Bush manipulated the intelligence for political gain. There's endless people online that will debate that one way or another. I'm not going to say he did, and I'm not going to say he didn't. And I am of the belief that going into Iraq overall was the right call. Eventually, Saddam Hussein would have died, and you would have had his two sons likely battling for control of the country and setting up a volatile situation in the region. Granted, terrible death and destruction occurred in Iraq, and civilians paid a heavy price. I believe, though, that in the end, going into Iraq was the right decision. And for all of the horrible heartache and tragedy that came out of it, that he made the best decision at the time. I also think that significant intelligence failures led to September 11th. There was the PDB. There was the arrest of Zacharias Moussaoui. You had tons of calls going into FBI and CIA from training schools across the country, flight training schools, that, hey, there's these guys that are here wanting to learn how to fly planes, but they're not really interested in learning how to land them. That should have been a huge flag. There was not coordination between the CIA and FBI. But after September 11th, 2001, if on September 12th you would have told someone that between now and the end of President Bush's term, there's not going to be another attack on American soil by foreign terrorists, people would not have believed you. That you would have not believed them. And he kept us safe. You had Richard Reed, who was tackled by people aboard the plane, the shoe bomber. You had the Anthrax, which turned out to be a domestic terrorist attack. But there was not another act of terrorism by a foreign force on American soil during the Bush administration. The financial crisis. The warning signs were all over the place that this was coming. And we didn't prepare for it. That's on President Bush. But he helped pass some of the big stimulus packages that occurred, and likely prevented with that another Great Depression. It would be up to his predecessor to rebuild the economy. And I think for all the disagreements I may have on certain issues with President Obama, overall I think that he did a fantastic job on rebuilding the economy. And to see how President Bush has conducted himself once he's left the White House has been nothing short of extraordinary. The man has been humble. The man has been dignified and an example. As do I think President Obama. They both feel passionately about issues and carry themselves in a manner in which hopefully the current president will when he leaves office in January. So that is all I have for tonight. I'll see you tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.